Before, I was kind of intimidated about actually going and meeting the people and meeting the family that I was going to stay with. And also I had some preconceived ideas about the people actually going on the trip with me. But when I got there and we were actually having to live the life of the Russian people and communicating with them and being with them, everything changed.
When I came back, it was different. When I got there, they were nice. The food wasn't that bad, and the bathrooms were, but everything else was okay.
On the morning of May 28, 1992, a group of 69 people from the city of San Angelo, Texas, embarked on a journey. This journey would carry them to a land most of them had only read about. Included in this group were 16 academic students and 4 sponsors, half of these from Central High School and half from Lakeview High School. A soccer team consisting of 16 high school students and their 8 coaches, and 25 adult tourists.
All of them got these light except the chutes on the upper deck. When leaving the aircraft,
Following their departure from Mathis Field in San Angelo, the group would make stops in Dallas, Houston, and Amsterdam before reaching their final destination, Moscow, Russia. After making their way through Moscow customs, the group was free to leave for downtown Moscow. To get their trip rolling, the group jumped into Moscow feet first and headed straight for McDonald's. Built in February of 1990, the Moscow McDonald's currently has 6 items on its menu. Then you could say Big Mac. The San Angeloans were loaded onto their buses and headed for their true destination, Ryazan, located some 2.5 hours away from Moscow. Eagerly awaiting the academic group's arrival in a downtown Ryazan parking lot was each of their prearranged host families, who quickly escorted them back to their respective apartments to settle in and get acquainted.
Спасибо.
The best family. I mean, I know everybody's like, no, I had the best family, but I definitely had the best family because they would give me enough space to where when all the American, friends would get together, they wouldn't sit there and, stare at you like, what are you going to do now? They would walk away as if, they had friends and they wouldn't want me to be around. And they would take me out to meet their friends and family, and they gave me my own room, just huge, big room, and I had a desk, and they went and they got, what was the movie? It was a movie by Van Damme, and it was in Russian, but they got this tape subtitles with American language in it, and I thought that was really great. And they never made me eat, but they always cooked this huge amount of food. They were just really great. I had coffee every day. If I got tired, they gave me 4 cups of coffee, so I tried to act like I wasn't tired.
With thoughts of the next day's game already in their heads, the soccer team finally arrived outside their hotel, where a traditional Russian greeting of bread and salt had been prepared for them.
After a much welcome night of rest, the soccer team awoke bright and early and made their way over to the historic Ryazan Kremlin. The Russian word Kremlin means highly fortified place, and every sizable Russian city is built around their own historic Kremlin, Ryazan being no exception. Their particular Kremlin has a very storied history. It was originally built in the year 1095 but burned down in 1494. It was then moved to its present-day site, where it has stood ever since. The large central building houses city offices and a museum. The Ryazan television interview was conducted just outside of the Kremlin walls, with the purpose of broadcasting the Americans' arrival to the citizens of Ryazan.
Why are you so sad, boys?
Here, the businessmen of Ryazan present the soccer team with a plaque commemorating their visit. The soccer team then made their way over to the soccer stadium, where they prepared for their participation in the opening ceremonies and their first game. Here, Team USA's head coach, Reggie Noble, shares some words before the game begins.
Coach Noble, Coach, you got any words before the game?
When tough gets going, how do I finish that?
It says it's the size of the dog story. Give us the size of the dog.
It's the size of the dog of the story. It's the size of the. It's not the size of the dog of the fight. It's the size of the fight and the dog.
Okay.
Joining the Americans in their week of soccer exhibitions were 3 Russian teams. While Team USA found itself on the wrong end of a 1-0 score at the game's final whistle with the Russian team, the Phoenix, the American players learned that they had the ability to compete with their Russian counterparts. Prior to the start of the game, the teams participated in the international tradition of exchanging friendship gifts on the field. The Americans received Matryoshka dolls, while the Russians received jazz caps, baseball caps with bold Hawaiian prints.
That looks great, great hat.
What they don't know that is urban camo.
Yeah. All right, yeah. There you go. There you go, that's what everybody does.
The following morning found the San Angelo groups at the Ryazan Military Landing College. This museum and cadet academy devoted to paratroopers was conveniently located directly across the street from the soccer team's hotel. Many of the articles contained in the museum are products of World War II, which the Russians refer to as the Great Patriotic War.
We are now still in the museum. Here's a wall mural of the soldiers marching through Red Square during their communist reign.
Ooh.
You can see the Kremlin and St. Basil's Cathedral behind there. These are the soldiers walking, carrying the Nazi emblems and flags.
Get a load of this.
And this is during World War II, 1945. This is the march through Red Square.
Following the museum tour, the entire San Angelo group found its way into the college courtyard, where after several group pictures, they patiently sat in a large grandstand, eagerly awaiting the military display about to begin. and begin the show did. In fact, it began so suddenly that this particular cameraman was somewhat startled by the sudden gunfire coming from all around him. The Americans were treated to a full display of the cadets' hand-to-hand combat skills.
But there is nothing to be done. So I give my life to you from Russia. Be healthy, wealthy, and I would like to very good luck and everything. And just the main thing, just I want you to enter your Marine school. Please remember.
Thank you very much.
Following a lunch at Ryazan's Lone Restaurant, representatives from all three San Angelo groups were bused to Ryazan's Third Baptist Church for a special Sunday sermon. Present easily exceeding the maximum capacity for the room, the Americans experienced the Baptist Church Russian style.
Ребята, и они еще поприветствуют вас своим пением и своими стихотворениями.
And they're going to greet you with their songs and poems.
На склонах, так и Богом создан мир, по его закону. Если скажут люди вам, Бога нет на свете, дети, вы таким словам никогда не верите.
Спасибо, Дима.
As a friendship offering to the fledgling church, the Americans gladly donated 200 Russian Bibles, completely printed in the Russian language.
За то, что мы сегодня имеем это общение.
I thank Jesus Christ, our Lord, for the chance for this meeting.
Перед тем, как я зашел на кафедру, журналистка подошла ваша и задала мне несколько вопросов.
Before I started my speech, your journalist from San Angelo came up to me and asked some questions.
И первый ее был вопрос, ведь раньше баптисты не могли свободно исповедовать свою религию.
And the first question was is it true that that some time ago, the Baptist church was unlawful in this country?
Скажу вам откровенно, я сегодня немного плохо спал.
Well, to tell you frankly, well. He said that he had a bad sleep today.
Мне сегодня приснился один сон, который 10 лет назад для нас был реальной такой действительностью.
He had a dream today, which 10 years ago it was a great reality.
Мне приснилось, что сегодняшнее наше богослужение должна разгонять милиция.
Well, he had a dream that today's meeting the militiamen were to come here and to disperse.
After the sermon came a short meal, which was then followed by a trading session outside the church, the exchanging not just of souvenirs, but of friendships.
This is outside the church here.
And we're at the stadium fixing to watch the Team USA compete against a Russian team in soccer.
We're going to win. We are going to win.
Confidence right there, buddy.
We're gonna win.
Thank you.
The soccer stadium in Ryazan has its own history. It was built as a backup facility to the 1980 Summer Olympics in Moscow. The soccer players found the conditions at the stadium to be very satisfactory, largely due to the lukewarm showers in the locker room, a luxury not always available in Ryazan. The game ended 2-2, and both teams recognized the universal feeling of frustration. Four prominent San Angelo and State Representative Rob Junell, School Board member Stormy Kimrey, a deacon of the First Baptist Church in San Angelo, Johnny Matthews, and businessman Bill Taylor toured the grounds of the Ryazan State Prison, where some 200 male prisoners are contained.
I began a brand new life, a different life, from which I was leading, and brothers in Christ, and these meetings with you and other people have helped me a lot.
In what they agreed as a very tense atmosphere, the West Texans spoke to the inmates on a variety of topics. They experienced firsthand the grim conditions faced by Russian prison inmates, especially when compared to those of the lush American prison system.
The next morning, all groups traveled to the air base, located some 10 miles outside of Ryazan. The community located on the base contained about 5,000 people and was basically its own city. The base harbored everything from World War II bombers to modern MiGs. As the academic and tourist groups were being bused back to Ryazan for their afternoon activities, the soccer team remained on the base, awaiting a soccer game with the team they had played earlier, the Phoenix. On their way to lunch, they encountered this sad but intriguing sight, a funeral procession. The entire mood of the moment was captured by the somber sounds of the band.
About the long-range aircraft which bombed Berlin.
One of the highlights of the airbase tour was the Russian Air History Museum. From its unique curator to its special audio and visual effects, it was easy to see why it's the only museum of its kind in Russia.
But you can see this well device, and there was a small
As an unexpected treat, the soccer team was led to the airbase auditorium, where they were entertained by traditional Russian dances performed by the base's youth. From there, the soccer team was asked to don their uniforms for a rematch against the team that had previously beaten them, the Phoenix. The Phoenix weren't so lucky this time, as the Americans snagged their first victory, 3-2. The scene on the field following the game found the Americans relishing in their victory, while the large Russian contingent on hand seemed to be just as proud of the Americans' accomplishment.
Спасибо. And hello. Say hi to America.
After the game, both teams changed into their dancing clothes and mingled with other base youth as they prepared to show each other that their feet weren't just quick on the soccer field. Russian DJs favored American and British pop music in the forms of Right Said Fred, Metallica, and EMF. In the meantime, the tourist and academic groups were boarding a barge for a scenic trip down the River Oka. The festive mood of the barge was even increased more by the added bonus of a live DJ, complete with loudspeakers and American music, from Nirvana to Vanilla Ice. And the academic students were in no way afraid to cut loose and bust a move. And the same goes for the Russian teenagers. And yes, don't adjust your set. That is who you think it is. That's right, you're watching San Angelo's own Mr. Stormy Kimrey show the world that yes, Aggies can dance. The changes taking place in Russia today are extremely evident, but luckily, the rich tradition of the Russian people remains alive and well, as is shown by this concert by professional violinist troupe and choir. But again, change is evident. This is shown by the choir's rendition of the Spanish favorite, La Bamba. Change is also shown in the appearance of such groups as American favorite Guns N' Roses on a Russian television. It is also shown in their love for other American groups, as these posters show.
I don't know if I like...
But in the end, the only change that all Russians strive for is some type of stability. While this may only be apparent in the youth, with their more Western ways of dressing and acting, it is also common to the older generation, who find it more and more difficult to abandon their firm communist upbringing.
The following morning found the soccer team on its way to a site the other San Angelo groups visited the previous afternoon. Crossing Ryazan's version of the Concho, the River Oka, their bus bounced along, headed for a destination probably unlike any they had ever visited before. Nestled in the beautiful green hills surrounding Ryazan, roughly 20 miles from the city itself, lies an actual working monastery, housing several authentic Russian Orthodox monks. The grounds of the monastery included this massive bell tower, undergoing renovation. The authenticity and uniqueness of the monastery experience was enhanced by such sights as this monk. And this cathedral, filled with beautiful icons. A natural cool water spring could be reached by taking a short hike through the hills, which most of the group did. Access to the bell tower's observation deck was granted only to 10 to 15 people at a time, largely due in part to the spiraling staircase climb that was necessary to reach it. But once there, the climb seemed secondary in comparison to the truly breathtaking view of the surrounding countryside. For the academic group, this day was spent at School 52, a public school attended by 7th to 17-year-olds. They were entertained by several of the school's students, including these two acts. That morning, perhaps in a last-ditch effort to shirk the label of academic team, several of the students competed in an international basketball game in School 52's gymnasium. Faced with such grim conditions as an out-of-bounds line located 4 inches from the wall, and a referee who did not comprehend the concept of calling fouls, the predominantly American team somehow overcame the adversity to defeat the all-Russian team 32-24. After the game, the academic students undertook the task of redecorating a music classroom inside the school. Under the leadership of a committee arranged prior to the trip, the room definitely became, in the truest sense of the word, Americanized. That afternoon, the soccer players participated in the last exhibition game.
I'm very glad to meet American guests on Ryazan soil.
Immediately following an awards ceremony meriting the efforts of members of all the teams, 6 of the San Angelo youth hurried to throw on a new uniform, this coming in the form of caps and gowns. What followed was truly a Kodak moment. Lakeview High School's Brad Ferris and Central High School's Ryan Junell, Ronnie Keister, Chris Marsh, Scott Meadows, and Jeb Wortham all received their diplomas from their respective principals, Bob Meek of Lakeview and Jerry Strickland of Central, and they were accepted as a class by school board member Stormy Kimrey. This American tradition was witnessed by an audience of 350 Ryazan residents, as well as most of the San Angelo group. It was a moment the graduates will never forget, mostly because they can now lay claim to being the first American students ever to go through commencement exercises on Russian soil.
For some of the Americans, mealtime was a treat, but for several others, it was a dreaded occurrence that came not once, but 3 times a day. But there was one fact concerning the Russian food that all the Americans could agree on. It definitely wasn't what Mom makes at home.
I completely thought that, from what I was told, it was completely to the other extreme. There were a few things that I had to get used to and kind of stuff down my throat, but it wasn't bad. I didn't starve. I was one time, you know how in America soup could be a meal, and one time I completely stuffed myself with soup thinking that was thing, and she came out with a whole dinner plate after that. And one thing you have to remember, if you don't eat, you think you're being rude, but if you eat a lot, they'll keep your plate full the whole night.
Trying to get out of that one. I thought the food was horrid. What was the first meal you had? Meat and rice with the gravy was really good, the gravy on the meat, and meat and rice. What was something that turned up in all of your meals? Why did you not like all of your meals? Something that turned up in all my meals? Yeah, was it the same food? Well, most of the time you could usually bet on meat or rice, or potatoes. The staple food there, potatoes. Yeah. Now, I understand that they have a big fetish for tomatoes and cucumbers. Oh, yes. I don't know what that. Appetizers. They're very big on appetizers, and usually the appetizers consisted of tomatoes. Okay. And cucumbers. Not bad. And some good cheese. You can find the finest cheese in the world there. And you always know when it's coming. You always know when you're going to be served the cheese, because you can smell it coming from the kitchen. Okay. Now, the soccer team's final day in Ryazan was spent touring the city's various landmarks.
Is this to one of the poets?
We spoke with you guys that this is a very famous Russian poet. He studied in school very thoroughly, and he was born on Ryazan land. But an interesting fact is that he visited the United States twice. He was in the United States in 1920, and he was married an American ballet dancer. Now what's wrong?
It's a ladybug.
Thank you.
And his name is?
Sergei Yesenin. I think that the monument is unusual. It seems that the poet grows from the land.
That is good. It's hard for the boys to climb on the monument over there.
In tourist groups, the final day in Ryazan wasn't spent in Ryazan at all. Following a 4-hour bus ride, the last hour of which finding all 50-some-odd travelers crammed onto one bus due to the broken suspension system on the other, they arrived at this historic crystal museum. The age and beauty of the museum's treasures and architecture were unlike anything many of the Americans had ever seen.
We're standing here at the hotel in Ryazan, Russia, about to say goodbye to all our friends and family that have been our companions for the past, what, 4 days? 4 days. We're heading on to Moscow for 2 days now, and then we'll be back to the good USA. Can't wait to see you guys.
The final leg of the San Angelo group's journey was spent in the city they opened their trip in, Moscow. While in Moscow, they enjoyed the accommodations of an immense hotel, another product of the 1980 Moscow Olympics.
Circus in Moscow at Lenin Park.
Ooh, Lenin Park? I didn't catch that tourist fact there.
Well, that's just a little side tip that probably I thought everyone would be interested in.
I got you.
Once referred to by Ivan the Great as the Third Rome, the city of Moscow includes an estimated 13 million people. However, for all of its immense size and population, there is an absence of skyscrapers and industrial air pollution, standard figures in most of the world's major cities. This, added to the striking greenness of the city's plant life, gives Moscow that special old-world charm, a quality quite hard to find in many of the world's major cities today. Moscow, the group's passed many famous sites, including this, Moscow University. And this, the world-famous Bolshoi Theater. And this statue, commemorating the storied founder of Moscow, whom the Russians refer to as Long-Armed Yuri. And this, the Moscow Public Swimming Pool, which is open all year round. And this building, the Russian White House. An interesting fact is that Boris Yeltsin was held up here during the coup. And this historic old Moscow hotel.
Most of the trading the Americans did in Russia was done on the black market, where the currency exchange rate hovered around 100 to 120 rubles to the dollar.
Do a trading deal. Well, you didn't even have to look very far. I mean, you could just step out of our little tour bus that we were on, and you didn't have to look for anybody to trade with. They would come find you because they recognize Americans immediately. And there were a lot of deaf traders that couldn't speak, and they had all the prices written down on their arms, and it was interesting.
Well, how did that work? Go through a whole situation of trading for an item.
With the deaf?
Well, just with anyone. I mean, deaf wouldn't be too much fun because they don't speak much.
Well, one of them spoke to me. He pointed it out, and I acted like I didn't understand. I really didn't understand what he was trying to say, and he had memorized this one word for his sales pitch. And 10! He would just yell it because, you know, he didn't know what he sounded like.
How's it go?
10! Kind of like that.
10 what?
Rubles.
Oh, we're talking 10 rubles?
Well, in this case, yes.
Oh.
Because he was selling little bitty, those emblems.
Oh.
Emblems, yes.
Emblems.
Emblems.
Is that an imitation?
It's an American equivalent of a patch.
Okay. Now.
Popular black market products included caviar, vodka, matryoshka dolls, military uniforms, and watches. Your best Russian impression. Do it.
Well, here we go. Well, it's military traders. We go up to them and, well, we get off the bus and here they go. Maybe military hats, maybe military watches. Would you like a military backpack? How about military military hats? That's about it.
Okay. The most concentrated area of trading in Moscow is found in a district known as the Arbat. Here, entrepreneurs line the street with their merchandise in hopes of striking it rich with American tourists. And while the taking of American currency for their goods is strictly forbidden, the traders have found many creative ways in which to get around the law. necessary goods in Moscow can be found here, where thousands of Muscovites flock to illegally purchase clothing and things of that nature. Another place of interest in the city is this convent, visited by several members of the group. Beautiful early century artwork, complete with gold leaf, were among works found inside. Popular tradition among Moscow newlyweds is the visitation of this site, the Eternal Flame, in memory of the unknown soldier, located just outside of Red Square.
Without a doubt, the most recognizable fixture in Red Square is the colorful St. Basil's Cathedral, which borders the southern end of the square. Built during the reign of Ivan the Terrible, it captures the spirit of Moscow. Red Square, or Beautiful Square as it's called in Russian, is located in the heart of the city of Moscow. It is the site of various holiday celebrations.
This is a state-owned department store here in Moscow. It's really massive in here. It's real nice. It's one of two state-owned department stores, actually. But you can find everything from toys to clothes here. It's great.
The gum department store is quickly becoming a giant dinosaur in Russian commerce. Because it is state-owned and operated, the prices of the goods found inside are simply out of the range of the average Russian salary. This, added to the fact that most of the goods found in the gum can be purchased much cheaper on the black market, means that it is on its way to being nothing more than an empty building with elaborate architecture, an extinct being. The National History Museum, built in 1874 to 1883, borders the northern end of Red Square. It houses the largest collection of historical material and documents that illustrate the most striking events in Russian history. And finishing the west end of the square stands the Moscow Kremlin, the former hub of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics government, and it currently serves as the nation of Russia's capital. The first oak rampart was built around the Kremlin Hill in 1156. Closed to the public till 1955 and later open only with a permit, the interior of the Kremlin has been open to visitors without any formality since 1958. Inside the walls, visitors are permitted to stroll on the paths and main squares without, however, passing beyond the limits marked by white lines on the ground or indicated by the guards. However, ordinary visitors must not go near the administrative buildings nor visit the Great Kremlin Palace. This large cannon, dubbed the Emperor's Cannon, was cast in 1586. It weighs 40 tons and has never been fired. It was cast mainly to intimidate Napoleon's attacking armies. This bell, called the Emperor's Bell, was cast in 1733. It weighs 210 tons. The relief work on it depicts the Tsar Alesky and his Tsarina Anna of their rule in the first half of the 18th century.
Push the W button, or push the T button. One of them will pull it back. You have to pull it back and hold it. Big old chunk of it.
In the cathedrals of this very courtyard, Russian Tsars were crowned and buried. To see is very rare, seeing as how photographs and filming are not allowed inside the cathedrals, and this rule is strictly enforced by the docents who monitor the visitors. Following their tour of Red Square, the Americans loaded onto buses and traveled to the airport to initiate the long voyage to San Angelo, Texas. This is a trip that changed people's lives. Beginning 3 years ago as a pipe dream, this cultural exchange has turned into a tangible reality that will continue to live as a landmark occasion in the history of San Angelo. This experience is relevant to all viewers in several respects. First, this exchange is a direct result of the downfall of communism. Students of both countries have experienced direct benefits from this historic shift in the Russian government. Second, the story of this exchange is an example of students and adults working together to achieve a common goal in order to provide a landmark opportunity. Third, this experience allowed students to see their Russian peers in their daily environment and to learn firsthand about the many experiences which students of all cultures have in common. One thing is for certain, though. This trip would have never have occurred if the people of San Angelo had not given their interest, time, and money to what they deemed a worthy cause. What has been created is the lifelong memory of a peek into another part of the world. Friends were made, myths shattered, and a new perspective was found by all. Good experience for you?
Oh, my word, yes. I would rank this as the best trip I've ever had.
It was an unbelievable trip.
It's surprising how good you can get to know a family in just 6 days, but yeah, you just have to experience it. But hopefully I will get to go another day.
Glad I went. I'll remember it forever.
Probably the first thing I tell people is how nice the people were over there and how well they treated me.
Anything else you want to say?
I had a great trip.
It was a great trip. It was a good experience for me, and I hope it was a good experience for all of the students that went. I think we made some friends and learned to respect more what we have and be more appreciative of what we have, and believe it was a successful trip.
Overall opinion over everything that's gone on in the past 3 years.
Unbelievable. You know, I can't believe what's happened in Russia today. What's changed since I first went over there in '89, and the potential of what it means. I think, you know, we're closer to world peace than we've ever been, and I think that's satisfaction in itself of saying, you know, we've been part of it, and the city of San Angelo has been part of it.
Russian people are today at a crossroads. The decisions they make now are going to affect them really for the whole rest of this decade, a generation, even the whole next century. Crises of the kind Russia has just gone through are comparatively rare for societies. Russia, however, has been racked by a series of shattering events throughout this century. Let me just tick them off real quickly. The First World War and a civil war that followed, a revolution, the Stalinist terror that came with industrialization and agricultural collectivization, World War II, the Cold War and the confrontation with the West, and finally an entire economic and political collapse. This recent series of events can be equated maybe to an earthquake. And so what we're going to see in the time to come are a series of aftershocks. And what the Russian people will have to do for the remainder of the 20th century is to dig into the rubble of their society and try to retrieve what they can, and then begin to build a new society. At this point, however, the earthquake analogy kind of breaks down, because after an earthquake, you save only the things you want to save and discard the broken things. But people are trapped in their history, and so a lot of what they will save, they really should discard, but they really can't, but they can't help themselves. Positive elements that they'll be able to use to build a new society, their history also carries with it a baggage that has a lot of dead weight, and they are going to take that into the future with them as well. What are these things? They have a government that has provided them with no history of individual self-expression or the responsibilities of self-government. Their government has always been centralized and authoritarian. It was that way in the communist regime, and it was that way in the entire history of the past. They have a culture that has given little or no reward for individual achievement or individual initiative. They have a group consciousness, and that's positive. They can pull together. But they have a lack of a sense of individual rights and individual responsibilities. So that is going to be a real detriment to them. Their future will include dealing with a series of interrelated problems that they have to solve if they have any hope of integrating their society with the other advanced societies of the world. Got to build a system of economic production based on competitive demands of the marketplace, and they've never had such a system. They're going to have to move to industrial and agricultural free enterprise, and it's very difficult to do these things incrementally. You can't, once you drive off a cliff, you can't stop halfway. So they have to do it kind of all together. They have to resolve their land problem, and this is the oldest problem in the history of Russia. It has never been resolved in the Tsarist regime. It was never resolved in the communist regime. Who gets the land, and how do you decide that? The oldest problem in Russian history. They have to build a political system not built on majority rule, which many people associate with democracy, but built on consensus. All decisions reached in a society that are workable for any length of time have to have the support of 80, 85, 90% of all the people. And they have to have a society that gives freedom to the minority. And they are not used to doing that, and it will be very difficult for them to build a consensus building system. Gigantic environmental problems. We think of environmental problems in the West, but these pale when you consider the environmental problems of the Soviet Union. From Chernobyl to the problems of overuse of water resources, the disappearance of the Aral Sea, pollution of their lakes, pollution of the environment with heavy metals, a vast array of those kind of problems that they're really not prepared to cope with. They face a whole series, a whole host of hostile nationalities, both inside of Russia and on the borders of Russia. And the more hostile those nationalities become, the more their own nationalism will tend to become aggressive. And they also face, and I think that this has been really forgotten, they faced within their own society a very large group of counter-revolutionaries who think all the changes since Gorbachev have been a terrible mistake. They will be actively hostile to any changes, and worse than that, active hostility can be dealt with. These people will tend to sabotage what is attempted to be done. So the Russian people have very great strengths, and ultimately they will overcome their problems. They will endure first, and then they will achieve a new balance. But it is going to be a very difficult situation, and it will be a very long road.
Ask you about your trip.
I tell people that I really miss Russia. It was a great experience, and I miss my family. You can't have a trip like that and then just come back and be the same person. You change, and you leave part of yourself there too. So it's just that I miss Russia, and it was the best experience of my life.